All right, hello everyone. Welcome to another fantastic live stream with fmtraining.tv. We're happy to have you all here. We're here to talk about the amazing FileMaker platform and educate you on the awesome variety of topics and things to learn about FileMaker. Today's going to be a bit interesting because we had to change at the last minute, but I'll get back into that later. A reminder that we stream on 3 platforms. We stream on Discord, we stream on YouTube, and we stream on Twitch. So please feel free to ask us questions, interact with us, especially today. We appreciate them. We love talking to you guys. My name is Margaret Carlton. I'll be your broadcast engineer for today. I am here with Jacob Taylor and Richard Carlton. So today the discussion is called WTF Campfire Q&A. Nick, our previous presenter, is sick. Unfortunately, his voice is kind of gone. He can't talk. He'll be back tomorrow, hopefully. But today it's going to be basically an open Q&A. We've got some questions we can ask to get the conversation going, but please ask us, our presenters, questions. Richard is here. He knows a ton, obviously. Jacob obviously knows a ton about FileMaker Server in particular. So the rest of the week is going to be this, by the looks of it. We have tomorrow and Wednesday, which is going to be the new free solution, FM Gallery, Image Gallery, and FileMaker with Nick. Hopefully he's feeling nice and ready and can come back and deal with that. That'll be great. Thursday, 360works is back to discuss their fantastic plugin updates with 19.3. That'll be a lot of fun. On Friday, we've got how to hack scripts and objects in FileMaker with our own wonderful Kyle Williams. So I'm sure that'll be a very entertaining, if more intermediate to advanced live stream. And on Monday, we have the new free solution. Again, Nick Hunter's back for another day to discuss that. FM Gallery has a lot in it. There's a lot to cover. All right. This is a live discussion. We talk to you back and forth, which means we don't necessarily cover very specific topics. If you have very specific questions and we are discussing them and it's not on our live stream schedule, we have an amazing training course. 90 hours of video content. It covers pretty much everything in the FileMaker platform there is to talk about, except maybe some more like super high advanced concepts. It's 15 to 20 minute highly animated videos. Richard is there talking to you. He's very entertaining. He always has been. And it's bite-sized chunks for you to grasp all sorts of topics on the FileMaker platform. We've got 2 options. One comes with FileMaker, one doesn't. Depends if you got it or not already. This helps us keep the lights on. So since we stream 5 days a week, we do it for free. We love doing it, but it's expensive. So we appreciate your support by buying our bundles and training bundles. And you get some fantastic training as a result. So hey, now that I have finished with telling you about the awesome training, I'm going to pop back over to Richard.
Yeah, absolutely. We do appreciate the support. For example, today our broadcast machine, for those of you wondering, it looks a little sketchy. That's because it literally was a 2018 Mac Mini that has had a hardware failure, so it's going to go into the shop. It went through a software update, and the software update decided it wasn't going to update anything, so I don't know what's going on with it besides it's unhappy. So we're going to take it into the shop and see what happens. So real quick, Jacob Taylor, are you there?
I am here, yes.
Yep. So today is kind of like an ad hoc question and answer session between the computer dying and Nick dying and all these things happening simultaneously. And hopefully Nick will resurrect himself tomorrow. Then, it's kind of an open Q&A. So I got Rick and Michelle and Wally on the YouTube side of things. We got a whole bunch of folks there on the Discord. So if I see me looking over this way, that's because that's where all the conversations are. 3 different conversations we got. We've had one question so far. It was one that Ken threw our way a little bit ago. And it was a kind of an interesting problem that he ran into. So Ken was running into a problem where people are on iOS devices, on iPhones or iPads. And what ends up happening is that they are basically are disconnected. They go do something, whatever happens with them. They take a phone call, they put the device down, they sleep till the next day, they pick it up. And FileMaker's default behavior is to authenticate them. One, it authenticates to make sure they're legitimately should be in the file. And how you manage authentication is one issue, right? There's a timer basically set as an extended privilege. I think it's the FM reauthenticate, right? And what it does is that's the time that they have time to live before they die, right? Normally, I think the default is a minute or 5 or 10 minutes or whatever it is. There's a default one that you get an extended privilege. You can set it for 0. So if you had a medical application, you don't want anyone to, so a doctor puts the iPad down, then some paparazzi person picks it up at the restaurant and then starts digging through the celebrities, medical records, something like that, right? That kind of stuff has happened before. So for a medical kind of application, you'd want to set the FM reauthenticate to 0, which means that when the person comes back in on the device, they have to put a thumbprint on or facial recognition or something like that to get into it, or put a username and password in. And so what Ken is trying to do is force them that when they come back in, it reruns the startup script. And we were discussing this before the start of the broadcast, and we're like, it's an interesting question because I don't know how to solve that problem, right? Because otherwise you have to do some sort of real kludgy hack where you set a timer and then you look to see the last time, the person's done anything, if there was a common thing they could do. Like they always navigate to a certain layout, or they always press a certain button repetitively. And then they haven't done anything in 20 minutes or something, so it forces it to rerun the startup script, right? But when you reauthenticate, so you're on a device, you have your phone, you put it down, you're gone past that period. When you reauthenticate with the device, with your face or your thumbprint, or you're on a laptop, or same with the laptop or any computer at all that reauthenticates, it's going to reauthenticate that you're in, and then it's going to restore you in your session to where you were, the layout you're on, the found set you're on, the record you're on, the sort state you're on, all that kind of stuff. It kind of gets a little goofy if it's trying to do, if you had a record lock in progress and then you disconnected, so the server had to release the lock, and then you come back and it has to try to relock it. There's some things in there that can get a little sideways where you might lose some data if the person didn't save it. That was another question that came up the other day. People are taking pictures with the insert from device. They weren't committing the change to the record. And so when you insert from device, just that one script step, and you have a picture or a signature or something on the screen, it hasn't been saved. You're like locally in the record, you put the insert from device into the container, whatever you're doing, but it's not saved unless you tell it to save, and then people put the device down, and that causes all sorts of problem. You start to hear all these questions. Oh, the dog ate my homework. The school thing, like, Margaret, why didn't you do your homework in junior high in the 8th grade, first period? It's like, hey, the dog ate my homework, right? So, Kristian Olsen, are you there?
Yes.
We are having a question, and you do a lot of Go training. And so Ken has a question about Go. He wants to be able to, essentially, if people are idle, he wants them to actually be forced to rerun the startup script on a Go application, although it really is beyond that. It's if they step away from the device for a period of time, we could force them to reauthenticate. But when you reauthenticate, it puts them back to where they were. It doesn't reinitiate the whole process, right?
True.
I mean, there's the allow. The only modification I would point out is that you can set allow error capture or allow user abort on or off. And depending upon that, and if they then sleep and go away, when they come back, if they had a script in progress, it will force that script to not resume. But even if you're running a script, you leave, you come back, you authenticate, the script will pick up and attempt to keep going. But if you say allow user abort off, and then they sleep, and then they reauthenticate, it doesn't allow that script to continue. It kind of terminates that script in place, right? So have you run into anything where you could force a startup script? How would you force a startup script to run, say, if the person was gone for 10 minutes or an hour?
That's a good question. And I at first I would actually reach out to you or Jacob with a question.
Okay. Well, so much for you. That's good.
Well, because the question has to do with the reauthentication. Because my understanding is the iPad goes to sleep, you wake it up, it asks you to put your password in, and like you said, it puts you right back to where you are. But isn't
Correct.
that an option? And isn't the other option to not allow them to just come back to where they were?
Well, then
I've always set it up to where it does that, but I thought that was an option in Go or on the server. But that's why I would have to ask you or Jacob on that.
Well, either it forces a username and password, a credential challenge, or it doesn't, is my understanding on that. There's no, like, you're gone, you're disconnected, right? You have to restart all over again. I don't know that is a...
Then the other question I would have is Go server, isn't there a way to boot someone after X number of being idle for a certain period?
Idle. Okay, this gets back to something I've asked for years.
What is idle?
Very simple. And on idle, it runs a script, right? If the user's idle, it runs a script, right? The implementation of what they do have is so gnarly of a hack, it's beyond stupid. So instead of it being something that's set on a privilege set basis, you have to set it at the privilege set. You also have to set it on the server. And if the two things like agree with each other, then you could do that. So it's the idle timeout has to be enabled, and the privilege set locally, it also has to be enabled on the server. Jacob, you want to log on to that server that you were giving me credentials for if you want to look at a file,
Sure.
right?
You want the admin console up or what?
Yeah, I think you have to do it in the admin console. Then you also have to do it. It's one of these sort of things I don't talk about too much because it's such a stupid thing, and it's been around since the dawn of FileMaker.
The double boot setting. Yeah, that's right.
But there's two parts of this. There's the part in the FileMaker file.
I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be sharing my screen. That's what I'm asked for. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for saying it a second time. All right.
All right. So what you end up doing is you end up having
So you want both of these things.
yeah, really it's two things. So you've got to go over and turn on the
Let's see if I can get them like that, maybe.
yeah.
Something like that. I don't whatever.
Okay.
It's that checkbox
Yeah,
that my mouse is on.
Yeah, this is the worst, I mean the most lame piece of crap ever, right? Because it's been around. I mean, this goes back to FileMaker 2 or 3, right? It's that old, whenever the first server came out. Then you come over here. So that by itself is not enough, right? You have to also come over here and turn on this right here, right? And you have to turn this on. So go ahead and do that. And then that would force them out. So I guess that solves the problem. It's just such
off the top of my head, without doing experimenting and trying things, this is the first thing that comes to mind. Is boot them and force them to relog in.
Yeah, so it's a totally. Why don't we set it for like 2 minutes and then log into a file, right, or something like that, right? So,
oh, sure.
Or a minute or 60 seconds or something like that. So custom.
Let's see if it'll let me do one.
Nope. How about two? What the hell? 10 is the minimum.
10 is the minimum. Okay.
All right, that's fine. So, and this is assuming they're idle, whatever idle means. Idle means, I guess they're not. I guess they could be moving the mouse around, but they're not doing anything like record locking or moving records, things like that. On a hosted file, anytime a new session is created, all the globals are cleared out. That is not entirely correct, Kyle Williams, and you know it's not entirely correct because that is in the test, certification test, right? Right. The globals will be reset to the condition they were at when the last single user was using the FileMaker file. So Kyle Williams, there's a conversation going on about, well, when you quit out of FileMaker in Pro or Go or whatever, and you reopen a new session, like log in and it pops it for the first time, all the globals will be zero.
You know what, Richard, too, I have one other option that would work for Ken, but I'm hesitant to even mention it because frankly I want to use it. But you could set a timer script, and I hate timer scripts personally. But basically you could create like a token or a timestamp, and so if they go idle, the next time it runs, if that timestamp is beyond a certain time of the last timestamp, you run the startup script. But again, I would be really reluctant to it. I hate on timer scripts where your solution is just being hammered by them.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that. Yeah, there's not really a clean way of solving this problem. So other questions that we have. I mean,
we have three.
We have other questions. All right, James and everyone, hang in there with us as we're going to go through open question answer. If you have questions, now's the time to throw one out. Okay. Right. So
I've been stacking. The first question is from Manco on Discord. Question: can you please explain the concept behind multiple master details?
Multiple master details.
That's confusing.
A master detail portal, or master detail is a portal, right? But multiple master details, that's if that's a blog post by some other consultant or something, then I have not seen that blog post. Well, who was that from?
Amanco from Discord.
AMCO, right? Well, yeah. So how come I'm on Discord and I don't see the Discord? Yeah, can you post a reference to that where you're seeing multiple master details? That'd be really great.
Looks like
I'm going to shelve that one briefly. Moki says, does on-timer script work on Go if they go to another app and come back? Yes, it does. It will keep it's attached to the window and it will fire, right? It won't force the app to come back to the front. You have to bring your app back to the front, but it will fire. Keep in mind that the on-timer window, one of those things is designed to play nice in the sandbox, so it won't jack up another script if it's already running. It waits patiently until kind of the other scripts that might be running are kind of, there's a kind of a pause in the action. They're under control. That makes sense, right? So that's kind of the idea with that. So they will trigger on the computer. Keep in mind that if you have a window and you have a on-timer, the on-timers are attached to specific windows, and you duplicate the window, then you have two windows, each with its own on-timer, both of which might fire and do things. And if you duplicate 5 windows, and you have 5 on-timers that are all going to be firing off. So just, it's kind of, you got to be thoughtful about that. And that's also a test question, by the way, on the certification test for those of you. If you take the cert test, they're going to say, well, you have a script on this, and you have it beeps every 5 minutes, and you duplicate the window 3 times, in this. So how many beeps will you hear, right? That kind of stuff. So.
And one other question too, Ken said that basically if they go idle, and I think part of the thing that's difficult about this is even just defining that, as much as it shouldn't be all that difficult to define. But I'm assuming he doesn't actually want the startup script to run. He needs something else to run because something happens when they go idle. I mean, I'm kind of curious what the context of the question.
Yeah, he's obviously, maybe a timer or something in there. He wants them to do something on that, but that's, you have to relook at that. It's the on-time. Listen, the on-timer is just like a countdown timer, like shooting a rocket, right? It's not an on-idle, which is so stupid, because if they go to all the effort of doing the on-timer, they should certainly be able to do an on-idle the same way. On-idle timer that's attaches to a window. It would be so simple, right? And whenever people are doing stuff, it just, it just kind of resets itself, right? And so it doesn't fire until it's literally been sitting there. It would solve so many problems in the world of FileMaker. And it's one of those things that you like, custom menus that don't suck, right? You kind of give up on even asking for it, because it's literally requesting that they bring dinosaurs back, right? And it's been pretty made clear that no one's going to resuscitate a dinosaur, especially if you watch the Jurassic Park movies where they start eating people. The liability on that's really big. So
we have another one from Ruben. He did get a link to video, but I'll ask it anyway. When making a multilingual app, what's better practice? Make one big global variable with all the text of a chosen language, or make a global field for every field / button, etc.? From Ruben on Discord.
Well, I don't know. You might throw that one by Kyle, because it sounds to me like either you do separate fields for things, or you could have a big field, a single big global like a JSON array or an XML array in there, and you could dig it out of there with get object elements out of there. I don't know which would be faster. I think multilingual is kind of an interesting thing because it still sucks right now, and until Claris gets through their complete Star Trek transporter, right? We talked about the Star Trek transporter, the re-assimilating of of elements and bringing things together. It's all a hack, right? It's all like it's not complete. Jacob Taylor did the emergency Star Trek transporter, and it mostly works about 97% of the items, and there's that 3% in there that have to be hand struck because it's not perfect. And so this is in that group of things. Like if you actually could perfectly take a file, kick it out to text, tweak it, you could actually run it through a text editor and have it substitute the elements, right? And then rebuild. Oh my God! Then you'd have an English version, a French version, a Spanish. So that would be.
I can tell people what Nick has done. I have a multi-language file I'm working on right now, and I know at least 3 different methods for solving this. But I'll just share the one that Nick likes, since I know we have a lot of Nick fans out there. He makes another table for the languages, and he basically does a repeating field. And so you can actually get the language. There's a function for it. And so I'll use that as basically a key, put it into a global, and then it looks through the relationship and it gets the index of the use repeating fields. you get the correct repeating field from it. And then you have basically like a I'd have to open up the file and look, but you have each word in there. It's a pain though, because
I was about to say that sounds painful as hell.
Because you have to track all the indexes and stuff. Yeah.
Or the repeating field. And then the thing that's hard too is repeating fields go left to right versus top to bottom. So that sounds like a minor thing, but when I have to go to my client and go, here's all the English words, what I want you to do now underneath this is write the Portuguese and the Dili words, and they have to like go from left to right to put all of those words in. And again, it's every single word that you want to use in the database. So that's part of the reason Nick too doesn't like fields or labels to the left of the actual field. He likes them on top. And so what you do is you put it in there, and you just have the correct one. I don't know if I can show my customer. I can't really show my customer file right now, but we could come back around to it. It's a harder question, I think, than we can answer in like 2 minutes on the spot.
Just a
short answer is it's a pain in the
ass. Let me just frame this briefly here. And then Jacob, if that thing fires off, feel free to interrupt me because you should be getting close to that. And that is at one point back in the day, we actually had starting point localized. FM starting point, there were versions in Spanish and all the main languages. And if you're in a language that's not one of those Claris supported languages, then don't be offended. It's just the way business is. So Claris has their standard like 5, 6, 7, 8 languages they have, Japanese and Chinese and German and French and whatever, Spanish, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea was that we localize these, and we had to hire some translators to do this. And we went to university and tried to hire some translators, and they were either from a University of California, they were either incompetent or really kind of hats. And it was really not a fun experience to get this, because I would frequently say, all right, here's our shipping. So these are PhDs and stuff. They're supposed to be professors and stuff. And I say, okay, now we need in our database, we're going to talk about, we have a contact, we have their billing address, we need their shipping address. And I have people complaining that my copy of starting point is talking about shipping like boats, not as in like a package delivery. And the PhD professor who's supposed to be an expert in Japanese should know this, right? Why should I have to explain that to them? And so it's one of those things that just even getting the correct translation is and then handle it gracefully. It's one of the reasons why Claris doesn't do more than they do. Or, for example, you say, why is a data migration tool this command line tool? Because if it's a command line tool, then engineering puts it together. It's not an official product. If it's not an official product, it doesn't have an installer, doesn't have documentation, doesn't have packaging, and more importantly, above everything else, it's not localized, right? So if you're an Italian, then you want to do the data migration tool, you're screwed. You're not going to have the data migration tool. So most of those people end up learning English, right? And they use the data migration tool in English, and allows Claris to push products out without all the giant investment for all the localization. When Claris bought StamPlay from the StamPlay people, they got snookered. And one of the engineers was complaining, the guy, he's no longer there anymore. He's actually the vice president of engineering. He was complaining vigorously that the management team got snookered because the solution was hard-coded in English only, and they were trying to build it so they could have it localized, and they pretty much almost had to completely rebuild the application because it didn't support, it was hard-coded to English, I think, or whatever the language was, right? So giant mess. So creating a localized application is not a trivial effort. So all right. Cool.
Okay, so we got another question from user Mac. Can a startup script be run upon authentication? Sorry.
Can a startup script be run on reauthentication? That's not part. No, that's reauthentication is reauthenticating. Not a startup script is part of a session startup, right? Reauthenticate, not session startup, right? So understand that.
Those
that
two
when you
things are orthogonal. Yeah.
At
session start, both happen because you have to log in and then you run the startup script. Whereas within a session, you can resume a session, force a reauthentication if that's how it's set up. That won't fire the startup script again. It's just an in-stream reauthentication.
Yeah, in-stream reauthentication. That's very well said, Jacob. Good job with that. Still great to Ruben. I listen. I put $60,000 the localization for starting point, And I think we recouped $10,000 back out of it because everyone wants free, right? We want free this, we want free that, right? We want free training, blah, 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 blah. And so what we were having to do is say, hey, if you want to copy a starting point localized, you need to pay us $100 so you can help contribute to that investment. And people were like, no, we'll just stick with the English one, even though we're Spanish developers or we're German developers. They didn't want to pay the $100. People are really cheap. So, I mean, I had a gentleman, you know, probably not here watching us, who was complaining that $200 for FM Gallery was a lot of money. And I'm like, then you really shouldn't be in the software business, because $200 is a rounding error in most operations, right? So, yeah, there you go. That's what Ken said, right? So, Ken says, give me that free stuff now, right? So that's exactly correct, without a doubt. James, any questions? Make sure you ask us any questions you have. Now's a good time. Other questions?
Got another one from Manco. Does on-timer script work in Go if they go to another app and come back? You guys might have already covered that. Yeah.
Yep. And then Amco was asking about a detailed explanation or a walkthrough of master detail.
I did get an explanation about it. It was referring master details similar to Nick's red downtown file. Example 3 connected master detail with relationships create and delete.
A basic master detail, we have the training on that in our training course, and Nick has covered it at great length. If you're looking for 2 or 3 master details, I'm still not clear on why it's 3 master details, but yeah, I'm not prepared. I don't have a demo for that, and I don't understand his question. So without a screenshot of his question or something like that, if he takes screenshots of question, shoots us to a support, the next time we have an open Q&A, we'll bring it up in there. Right? But that's one of those deals where if you have a question, you have to be able to articulate the question to us so we understand it. Otherwise, we don't even know where to start. So.
And then we do have one from Oregon Dean that Jacob answered, but I'm going to ask it anyway just so people can hear it. What is the best way to analyze DAPI data consumption? I had a month that used several gigabytes of data, and I have no idea why. Is there a log somewhere?
Yes, there is a log. So on your FileMaker server, in the FileMaker server application log directory, there's an fmdapi.log. No, it will actually not give you the like the data usage or something like that. It will give you every request. So if you're like, ooh, we used like 10 gigs yesterday, and that's very surprising, then you can go in there and see what was happening yesterday, and it will give you at least an overview of what kinds of requests were coming in. And so if you know your application, you can work backwards from there. Again, I don't think it actually gives you like, this request was this many kilobytes or something like that. As amazing as that would be, it does not. So there it is.
Oh, there you go.
We got it.
Yeah, yep. This is Claris's from literally back in the Pony Express. This is when, along with the IE11 web viewer, they gave birth to this feature too, which is the super hacked up close file. You're going to close this file if, it's not going to run a script for us or do anything useful. It's just going to eject the person into space, but giving them a really screwed up dialogue that we can't control, right, along the way. So, yeah, so James says, kind of a simple question I'll ask. Is there a standard on window OpenScript out there? I use all platforms trying to create one that opens all card windows nicely for each platform.
Is that like where you've pre-programmed all the centering of the windows and the auto sizing and like all of this in one place?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time, if
like the card, universal one of those,
the cards tend to, if you don't put a lot of, Claris actually made the card windows kind of semi-smart. If you don't put a lot of information on them, they auto size the size of the layout and they auto center themselves, which is kind of nice, right? Mm-hmm. So ideally, I'm not sure. I mean, James, it's a simple question, but I like simple questions, but can you write up more information on that and shoot it to me at support? Even if we don't get it to you in a time, other people have listen, this is what everyone has to understand. You quit sharing just for a second so I can wave my hands around real quick. So Margaret, I don't know if you guys see me, but yep. If you have a question, there's about 500 other people have the same question, I guarantee. And so as a result, please send it to me at support RC Consulting, because then as I see questions come in, it reminds me of where you're getting stuck. And it's really helpful. Like Amco has one about master detail. I'd like to know what that's about. And then James has one about a standard open script. I guess you could have like a standard cookie cutter open script. It's one of the questions I would ask almost like Kristian Olsen again about that, but I don't have one. Largely because card style windows are but you could have it depends on what your needs are, right? Like if people were doing data separation, some other crazy stuff, then every time they pop a window, they might do some extra things, right? So yeah. For example, what I will do in ours and starting point, you'll see this a lot. We have a kind of a cookie cutter pattern where we say, go to layout, right? Like if you're going to contacts, you're going to go to an invoice. You just press the button, you go to invoice, right? And the same window is going to switch from showing a contact layout to a invoice layout. But if I hold a modifier key down, any modifier key, and I don't want to train people which modifier key to use. If they hold Shift or Control or Alt or Command or Option or whatever, it pops it in a new window and offsets it a little bit, right? Which is a super awesome thing to do because that way you can still have your contact window there. You can be over here looking at your invoice. You can go back and forth between your windows. Not really practical with Go. Well, Go will do it. It's just that it only really shows you one window at a time. WebDirect, the same issue. But if you're on Pro with lots of monitor space, which is awesome, that can be really handy as well. So you let the user specify pop it in a completely separate window. So that's something I would use, like a cookie cutter kind of technique.
Yeah, I think the feature I love most about my database is that the number one script just launches whatever you're looking at in a new window. It's just a single line script.
Yep. How do you go to multiple objects using a script parameter? How do you go to multiple objects? Multiple objects. So it's just almost like a Heidi Porter kind of Chris Moyer like trick question. So I'm pretty sure that when you go to an object, you have a singular object you can go to in terms of focus on the layout, right? So that's what Kyle just said. So I was wondering if there was some sort of secret Porter Moyer secret handshake where you could select multiple items at one time. So the answer is no.
Yeah, I think even in that case, you're still only going to be having what, you can go to an object, but it's going to be an object and then the next object and then the third object or whatever. If you give it a list, you'd obviously have to make the logic to cycle through or something. But
yeah,
if you're trying to like spider around the layout and do stuff in your script.
All right, other questions. So James says, my issue with this card style window from one layout to another card window is it doesn't resize well. A card normally, okay, once again, this is notwithstanding the hackery that goes on with card windows, like where you pop it outside of an area. But normally a card window is superimposed on top of your main window that you're on, right? So if you close the card window and then you open the next card window, it should resize and center itself, right? If you're using it in its original intended fashion. If you're hacking the crap out of it, James, doing something kind of funky, like it's super ginormous or it's offset or something, then yeah, you're going to have to remember the card window. If you don't specify a position or a size, it's going to go to the basic default position size of that layout. Because a card window is basically driven by a layout. Normally the layout will be somewhat smaller and snugglier and not giant, right? People hack card windows to do other unnatural things with them, but that's kind of what that does. It's okay. So Chris is back. So he's there, but he's not here. So he's not in the live stream, but he's talking to us. If an object is contained on a tab, you go to contain object in the field. It will also get you to the tab. Okay, so that's kind of yeah, that's true. That's true because it's a contained element, right? So Chris is pointing out that I'm going to read it slowly. If an object is contained, i.e., a field on a tab or a field on a slide control, right? And you target that object, then you're also going to end up selecting the parent encompassing item, whatever the hell that is. I'm going to paste this over here in the other areas as well. Discord, and that's what Chris said there. So
yeah, just make sure it's uniquely named.
question, is RCC or anyone else using FileMaker with cryptocurrency, I guess? He says crypto question mark. I'm kind of interested in having FileMaker keep track of my buys and sells across Coinbase, MetaDask, and blah, 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 right? So
yeah, we had a customer that did that, correct? They used FileMaker. I think that's actually what the app that they built was that. It's taken all the different transactions and whatever, and then giving you the single source printout of all your buys and sells and the cost basis and all that stuff. That was a paid service that somebody sold. So
yeah,
I say that in the past tense because they were selling it like a subscription access to it. I say it in the past tense because we shut it down. They didn't make enough money to justify it, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of
trying to do a vertical market app type thing, basically. And it didn't succeed. So, yeah,
I mean, if you're going to do that, you'd want to be connected with these banks or whatever, these exchanges, and have them kind of as a recommended, I don't know what you would call that, but you're going to collect amalgamate. Forgetting the word, but you're bringing all together all these different APIs. And to do the transactions and to keep track of that. Yeah, that's a real, it's not really crypto based. It doesn't matter. You could be doing any commodities, right? Because cryptocurrency is a commodity, right? It's like buying oil, selling oil, gold, buying Dutch marks, buying US dollars, T-bills, things like that.
Yep.
So,
and I think that we have another, I forget whose customer that is. We have another one that it's the same thing. They have many whatever investments in the stock market or something like that, various kinds. And that also is what they do in FileMaker. It isn't about, this or that thing. It's just FileMaker is the layer where you bring all the records into the buys and sells, and then do your net and what's your cost basis and like what do you need, hit your button to print your stuff out for your tax guy or whatever.
Sure.
So that they have all the details in one nice clean for you.
Absolutely. So Moki's like, sweet. Yeah, they're selling it. Not really. Yeah. I think that if you were going to build that and really wanted to have a serious business with it, one, you wouldn't do it in FileMaker because you'd need a very inexpensive platform that you could use, and you'd want it to be web-based. So then when you had to fix an API, you didn't have to patch people's solutions, right? Because remember, if your API, because all these exchanges, APIs are always changing, right? Like PayPal changes every 12 to 18 months or whatever. They do something where their old API maybe doesn't work anymore, so you have to go in there and change the construction of that curl request to them, and then it magically works again, or the data coming down from them changes, so you have to parse it a little differently, right? So there's always this maintenance that goes in. It's one of the things that Claris Connect was kind of frankly, the only claim to fame that I thought that they had was that they would maintain that, but it's maintaining it's a pain in the ass, it really is. So Moyer, where was Chris saying? Chris Moyer says that Kyle Williams agreed. Okay, so what we do is we're going to pivot over to Kyle Williams because Kyle had a comment or a section.
A little bit above. There's an issue using the Goto field where if you have the same field in multiple places, it could possibly go to the wrong one. Better to go to a named object. And then Chris responded, agreed. You can have the same field on multiple tabs, for example, but as long as their named objects must be unique, just got to, for example, field.secondtab.f00 to get to the right one.
Foo. He said foo. Now I know who wrote all those foo questions on the damn certification test, because there's all these questions like foo this and foo that. I was always wondering what goofball did that. And that would be not a goofball. That would be the
super old
Dr. Moyer.
No, super old school programmer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, foo's a filler word for a variable or for a thing that we're not naming right now.
Oh, okay. Well, then, yeah, there you go. So maybe it's not Chris Meyer's fault. So, yeah.
Yeah, lots of examples are A equals foo and B equals bar.
Yeah, well,
they start designing out the logic you're supposed to think about.
Yeah, Claris doesn't use the word bar. They just use foo in a lot of those questions. Got it. So. Bar, foo, bar. Yeah, I know. Yeah, interesting. So, there's a question. Can you please explain how to go to the last navigation window tab, for example, after running another window and then coming to the original layout?
Yes.
I mean, basically, we have whole live streams on this where we talked about going backwards, right? The back button, the idea of having a back button and navigating backwards. There are samples of that. I don't think I can do that in 5 minutes here. Amco's got really good questions. They're big questions, right? Amco, have you thought about doing some coaching? It sounds like you might have a better use for coaching than most people.
Another window and coming back to the original layout. Yeah, I mean, basically, you have whatever you've started at layout A, you go to layout B. In that change, you have logged layout A as your last navigation. You put that in the variable, whatever that means, and then when you're on layout B, you're going to have a back button. And all that's going to do is it's going to evaluate your previous layout, whatever that variable that you just set, your global that you've specified. And you can specify like go to layout or go to, open new window, whatever. And you can put a variable in that instead of specifically defining the layout name. And so then so FileMaker doing what FileMaker does, keeps your found set or whatever else you might have had on that previous layout, and you just swap back over. So.
All right, so yeah, this topic has been covered at length in the 2019 Lean Design course, which is free, right? So that was there
extensively.
Yeah, Nick beat on it pretty extensively. Kyle Williams apparently also shot a video on it. So it's a common thing because there's back buttons in browsers. Therefore, since a browser has it, everything else in the world should have it too, right? Like a back button on your spouse, right? Back, right? Command C or whatever. And so I just posted the link to Kyle's video there, and obviously if you actually go to FM, actually the easiest way is probably to go to fmtrain.tv and look under individual courses and find the Lean Design link and click that, and then you can see the 2020 material and the 2020, 2021, and 2019. So it's all in there. Cool. All right. Any other questions before we wrap for today? Tomorrow, we're going to be picking up the FM Gallery conversation with Nick Hunter on, because he basically took the FM Gallery, the existing product, he's making it free, giving it away. The website is partially done or whatever. I'll give you more of an update on that tomorrow. But then specifically, he will be having a pro version of that will be a paid product. The new FM starting point with the new neomorphism design surface on it is in progress too. Actually, I've got screenshots from Nick where he was working on that. So that's pretty interesting. That basically goes through a whole modernization. Doesn't change the features of starting point. People are like, well, what new features will it have? No, it's just a redesign for the latest in design aesthetic, right? So very, very important concept there. So that's about it for today. Margaret, anything other questions?
I don't see any. I think we're good. Thank you guys for asking all these questions. We do have one last question sliding in 10 minutes prior from Timothy Bulwark. Can you in browser mode have a button that changes the view from list to form to table? Like a single button?
I'm thinking about a script step that goes to, you could build 3 versions of the layout and do it that way and have them set. I don't know if that's a preference, a setting to view as. I guess it's one of those things I'd never done, but it's probably in there. Jacob Taylor, are you having a brain on this at all or a thought process?
No, sorry, I was looking at something else.
Okay, sorry. I'm just going to fire up a solution real quick here and go to scripts on it.
Calvin says it's called view as.
Yeah, I know. I was wondering about view as, right? But the rub is, that is a script step, because view as, it's one of those script steps that's been there forever. And then there it is, Windows, view as. You could cycle it. Yeah, right there. It's view as script step. Good one. That's a script step I don't know that I've ever used, because I would either allow people to change it themselves, but I wouldn't because when I design layouts, they're designed specifically for one of the 3. I don't like, it'd be like something Nick would break that, right? Do something different. But I design layouts either as a form, and if it's a form, it never cross-pollinates as a list. And table is like this red-haired stepchild that we almost never use except for trying to triage a broken script or something, and you want to look at the data in real time. So, yeah. So it's, that's Calvin. Yeah, view as, right? So there you go. All right. Well, that's it for today. That's a good one. Interesting. This one goes back to dawn of time too. And I don't know how many of you use it. I mean, just out of curiosity, who has used view as? I know you know about it, but actually you remember using it in a script and it provided value for you. I would love to know who that would be. Kyle, you would do that? Kyle's typing.
Not me.
Okay. Yeah. So it's one of those, like, I guess this would, for a thing, but yeah, I'd have to ask that. All right, cool. Oh no, JSON. Yes, we don't want that. All right, cool. All right, that's it, Margaret. Roll credits, baby.
Woo. Okay, hold on. Escape.
Press the button.
I'm working on it. Give me a sec.
Launch. You must launch the eject.
I'm launching, closing credits. We're good. See? Bye.
Guys just stepped up the whole way. Calm, cool, collected the quarterback. Great read, good patience. More importantly, great job up front protecting this quarterback to give you a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
Trying to rally down 10. 9:25 to go here in the fourth. Short motion by Amendola from the left. Brady takes the shotgun snap. Stands in, throws it left for Amendola. Reaches up and snacks a high throw and lands inside. Behind him, again he makes the grab.